All right. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We've had another exciting week of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. A lot of good points have come out, and it seems that the prosecution is making a lot of progress in trying to paint a picture in regards to the charges that they have on Sean Diddy Combs. Today, we are privileged to have an exciting person. We have a legal analyst that has been on the channel. She's blessed us with her presence many times. And so today she's going to come on and help us understand this case, especially when it comes to a RICO. Welcome, Candace Kelley. How are you?
Hey, on a Saturday. Look at us on a Saturday, Mel.
Yeah, still at it. We spent all week at the courthouse and we're still talking about the case. Isn't that something?
Yeah, no, it is. But you know what? It's one of those cases where even if you're not doing it formally like this, you're still thinking about all of those people. Like I was still thinking about Jane last night, on the way home. I was like, okay, going through her testimony in my head, still thinking about all those people. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Amazing. I heard something and I thought about you. Somebody said it could be a rumor. They said
Okay.
there's 30 predicates. Could you explain how many different charges he could potentially be facing or underlying with the RICO?
Okay. So with the RICO statute, there are 35, there's a
Oh,
list of 35 predicate offenses, two of which you need to qualify, if you will, for RICO to take effect. So on that list, out of those, he's been charged with a few of them. So some of the predicates are, for example, the drug charges or the sex trafficking or the arson. So these are the types of things that if he gets two, okay, over a period of 10 years, then you have your RICO. But I think what's interesting is that we have to see how the jury actually accepts that idea. I mean, the jury could potentially say, hey, yeah, that he's met all these charges, but we do not think it's RICO. We do not think it's a criminal enterprise organization that existed just for the purpose of doing this to these women or just for the purpose of carrying out extortion or sex trafficking or bribery or tampering with witnesses. So the jury may look at it in a different way. In other words, the RICO charge could potentially not stick.
okay. So let's just entertain that. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's say he gets all three of the charges: the RICO, sex trafficking with fraud, force, and coercion. And then he also gets sex trafficking over state lines. What kind of time would he be looking at?
Yeah. So if he gets RICO, that's up to 20 years. Sex trafficking is a mandatory of at least 15 years. If he gets crossing state lines for purposes of prostitution, that's up to 10 years. So when we say up to, it could be three. Maybe the judge says, hey, you are guilty for crossing people over state lines for purposes of paying them for sex, right? We know that is prostitution. But I'll give you 3 years because it's up to 10 years. Then he would get time served. Normally, with a federal sentence, you serve maybe what, 2/3 of your sentence. So that's not bad. He's already been in there since what, September? What are we in, 10 months now? If he gets 3 years and you only serve really 2 of those years, he'd be in there for another year and some change. Let's say, for example, if the judge gave him 3 years. But we have to remember, we're not just looking at, one person crossing state lines. So far, according to testimony, according to the evidence, which is what people should understand too, that when a witness takes the stand, that is considered in the court of law evidence. We normally think of evidence as something, more tangible like this or a text message or a gun. But evidence becomes available to the court through the testimony of a witness. So according to the evidence, we're not just talking about a couple of men. We're talking about at least 15 men that we've heard of by name or by their pictures being shown as an exhibit. So it's a big charge in terms of him crossing state lines. for purposes of prosecution. And I think that's something that anybody would say. I think that the prosecution has gotten there. We are there for that particular charge.
Okay, so I've been sitting in the courtroom every day in my little seat, as you know. You have been
Yes.
too.
Wait. But let's go back, Mel. Mel, we call him first in line because Mel's going to be first in line. Mel is first in line. You just look for the hat, and you know that's where the line starts. Don't shortchange yourself about that, brother. You are first in line.
I told you, I'm
Every time
committed.
I come up, sometimes I pull up, I'll go past, I'll be like, there goes Mel. I get my parking space. I'm like, first in line. You got to just look for that hat. Anyway, but go ahead. Yes, you come, you show up every day, and then what?
Okay, so here's the thing that I wonder. There's 12 jurors, right? Let's say 11 says he's guilty and 1 says he's not. How would that play out in court?
Oh, wow. If there's one that really sticks to his or her guns and says, I do not think that he's guilty, like on all of the charges, and what the judge will typically say is, I know y'all are working towards a solution, and you've come back to me and say, hey, we can't come up with a full 12 agreement on anything. He's going to say, go back to that deliberation room, because otherwise that one juror continues to hold out, then it's a mistrial. Then he has to go back to trial. Nobody wants that. No prosecutor, let me start there, right? Because the prosecutor has the burden of proof. No prosecutor wants a mistrial. This means that they haven't done their job. And not only have they done their job, and I mean that just kind of in a legal, practical sense. They've done a good job. I'm just going to, so is the defense. I'm just saying, on paper, they have not gotten a guilty verdict. That's all. Meaning that they failed to reach that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. The money, the time, flying in witnesses. We want to make everybody go through that again. Mel, do you even want to be here and do this again? So the judge will try as hard as he can to say, go back, go back, go back. If you take a look at R. Kelly's case, let's see, in one of the cases, because remember he had state and federal charges, I think it was the federal charges, 22 hours it took for them, sitting in a room with 11 other people than yourself. On other charges, I think he was, the jury was in there for 11 hours. For those people know about Kenneth Raniere, he is the one who ran Nixon, the sex cult and sex trafficking, some of the same charges with Sean Combs. They took only 4 hours. And that's not good when it's real quick. That means that 12 people quickly believe yay or nay. Yeah, this man did it. It's when it's past 5, 6, 7 hours that you're like, wait a minute. There's some discussion about something. Something's going on. 12 of them don't believe the one thing. So that's how it will play out. If that one person hangs out to the end, mistrial, meaning they could try him again, but that is they don't work for that. That's not how the Southern District of New York works in terms of, okay, mistrial it is. They're going to work as hard as they can to get a verdict.
Okay, so we have 64 people in. We want to ask you guys to hit the like button to bring awareness to the video and to us as a team, a strong team. Tell everybody about yourself and what you do and who you are.
Well, yeah, I am at Candace Kelley TV on Instagram, and I'm a legal analyst. I have been for years, but I'm a journalist by trade and a professor. I also teach the law, which is why some people, they like the way that I speak in terms of me breaking it down. It's because I'm breaking it down to a bunch of 19-year-olds every day. So that being said, I like to think of myself as the person who can really kind of break down information for everybody to understand, because that's really important. I also serve as a defamation expert on various cases, meaning that the expert witnesses that you've heard in this case, which I think we've just had one, right? Dawn Hughes. Right. No, we've also had somebody to come in and talk about the video, right? And break it down. That was an expert.
Yes.
I do that. Right. That's right. I do that for defamation cases where I go in and talk about journalism and where defamation meets this whole idea of defamation meets journalism. So I've done that on various cases. So that is who I am. Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's amazing all you have accomplished. I'm so privileged to have you on board. It's so
Oh,
amazing.
well, thank
So
you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
you have a lot of fans here. So Deborah is saying hi. She loves commitment. Thank you, Deborah. We have Uda on the go. You know Uda from the courthouse, right?
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Patty.
make it. Yeah, he says salute. Make it make sense is in the building. He has a
Okay, hey.
awesome channel on YouTube. Go check him out. Awesome brother.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
I call him.
I will say this: Mel and I do our thing, but for people who do want, me to speak with them and speak on their shows, I am available. But I know Mel and I have our thing. So if you want information, just come here, okay?
Absolutely. I don't mind sharing. You know, it's amazing to have an expert on deck. So here's the question that I have for you. Let's say there's a hung jury, right?
Yeah,
Does Diddy stay in locked up for the interim or is he set free?
he's probably going to stay locked up.
What?
Yep. If there's a hung jury, he stays locked up. Why? Because listen, now let's think of it this way: the judge already thinks that he is a risk on many levels. One, a risk for witness tampering based upon what he's done before he was, in Brooklyn at the detention center, and two, based upon what he did once he got behind bars in order to try to get the two witnesses by using three-way calls to kind of, chop it up with some people to make sure that, maybe the witness, did you believe this? Or, there is evidence of that. That's why he's there now. No way to let him out now, because I mean, at this point, where's victim? Is it victim number 3? Who's
Yes,
missing?
still
Yeah.
missing.
Where is victim number 3? I mean, there's a lot of questions in and around some of these witnesses anyway. So that would probably he'd be even more inclined to try to reach out to someone potentially if you let him out after this, and he would just stay behind bars. Still the same flight risk is the bottom line. Still the same potential witness tampering risk in terms of how the law is looking at it. Not me, not you, but he's in the detention center for a reason. They do not trust him. And if this was a mistrial, they would continue not to trust him. I mean, has there anything that indicated otherwise? Nothing. He would stay behind bars.
Wow. So
Yeah.
guys, I've made a commitment to this trial. I'm in court every day. And so today we're going to break down this week. At the end, we're going to have some of you come up to ask questions. You have to mic up and you also have to have your camera on so we know who's coming on and we want to answer your questions. So this week, at the top of the week, we had our first witness, and I was shocked that he took an immunity deal, right? What's that all about? Eddie Garcia. What did you think?
Yeah. Well, I thought, and I'm just looking at something right quick. So, Eddie Garcia, he took the immunity deal for a very good reason. Let's think about this. There's 2 levels that we have to look at Eddie Garcia and the hotel. On the one level, we have Eddie Garcia, the guy who took the bribe and split it up with 3 other people. It wasn't just him. He got $30,000 out of the deal. Part 2 to this is the fact that the Intercontinental Hotel did give Cassie Ventura $10 million. And it is because of the Eddie Garcias of the world. All of that was wrong and illegal. You have a responsibility to me when I come into your hotel it's a safe environment, right? We want our hotels to be safe. You've got security there. So obviously you're making an effort to make it safe. The truth is you didn't do that. That's why Cassie got that $10 million. So that's part 1. People are like, why did she get $10 million? What? We didn't know that. That was a surprise. It was. But if you think about it, it does make sense. You go to a hotel and somebody allows a crime to happen to you and not report it, and they made money on the side. Intercontinental Hotel, you owe me money. You do. Back to Garcia, though, we know why he got immunity because, I mean, talk about obstruction of justice. Talk about not doing your job. He had a responsibility. He lied to police officers, right? Because they asked him. He didn't say anything about that money. So all of that, he needed immunity, meaning that anything that you say on the stand related to this, you're not going to get in trouble for it. You can't perjure yourself, but you're not going to get in trouble for it. So I understand it. He needed it. And I think by now he makes the third person, or we've heard from three people so far who I believe have gotten immunity.
So let's talk a little bit about agency when it comes to Eddie Garcia. Technically, he stood on his business and said, hey, I'm not going to do this. Talk to my manager.
True.
His manager is the one that set the stage and says, hey, we'll do it for 50 grand, right?
Yeah, no, that's very true.
So does that change how he's looked at as far as the legal standpoint in this whole deal, or no?
No, you know why? Because he went home with $30,000 and he bought that used car. And this is the thing, and it comes up a lot, not just inside of a courtroom, but in life, but definitely in courtroom, because we see people making life decisions every day. At some point, Eddie could have said no. Eddie did not. Therefore, he was responsible for his actions as a grown man. When his manager said, tell him I'll do it for 50,000, he could have said, boss, I can't do that. But he didn't. And so therein lies the problem, thus immunity.
Let me ask you your personal opinion. Do you think the feds showed up at their house and shook them down over what happened, what he testified to?
Are you saying, so based upon Eddie Garcia, do I think that the feds, so what the feds will normally do is when they have enough information on you, they can do a lot of things getting information. And some of them are very extreme that we've seen in movies in terms of, all right, we need a plant. Go in, the Black Panther Party and infiltrate it, or go in the mafia and infiltrate it. I mean, none of that went on. But on a lower scale, they probably were following him, tapping his phone. Eventually, you get that knock on the door where they just get to try to get information. You don't have to speak to the feds at that time until they force you to. But they probably went through all of those steps. And in between, he probably was telling somebody on his team, look, they came, they told me. But the feds do give you a lighter kind of knock on the door, literal and figurative, before they come, knocking it down. So at that level, that's probably what they did, and that's probably all they needed. This guy was making $10.50 an hour, and he's also someone that probably didn't have a lot of power then or now, and they probably didn't have to do a lot to say, hey, buddy, we got you. And now we're not trying to take you to jail. We just need you to be on our side. And that's how they were able to get him. I doubt it was a lot of, him hand-wringing and them, kind of trying to rough him up. I think he knew where he fell within his hierarchy of power, and that was that he did not have a lot. So go ahead and go be with the feds and stay out of jail.
Right. Was there anything as you were sitting in the courtroom that started to ring RICO when you heard Eddie tell his story or be cross-examined?
There's something about, and we've talked about this before, Mel, about just being trained to think about what RICO looks like. There really is something about money in a paper bag that just screams, wow, all right, that's the RICO, ding, 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 that we know, that kind of like real. But honestly, I was mentally at RICO before that. When I was really like, all right, this is actually the RICO that we are trained to understand. Because again, we're trained to understand that RICO looks one way, but it looks many, many different ways. It's just that we're trained by the media and The Godfather and Scarface for it to look a certain way. When Capricorn Clark talked about being in an abandoned building with the doors locked behind her and a lie detector test and mentions of your body in the East River, that's when I said, that's the typical RICO that we know about in terms of the mob and the mafia. Again, it looks very different legally, but that's why I was like, ooh, if he didn't sound like the mafia, he certainly sounded like the mafia now. Think about the movies that we know. Beating women, like when we heard Cassie, that's right. not what we know of in the mafia, right? In fact, granted, we've seen them slap them around in movies, but beating women consistently every week, that's not how the movies portray the mafia. So So it wasn't feeling like that until we got to Capricorn. But still, that is not the way the jurors are looking at it. I'm just trying to make the point that is when I thought about the mafia and how we typically know it.
Okay, so next we're going to get into Derek Ferguson, but we're going to take a sidebar real quick. And I want
Okay.
to ask you this question based on what you just brought up, right?
Mm-hmm.
They framed this case during the opening statements that it was domestic violence. That's what the defense was trying to frame, right?
Yes.
Okay. But Diddy's beating the chef. He's beating Nash, right? The stylist,
Mm-hmm.
Mia, the employee, and so forth. How does that affect domestic violence versus a RICO? Any thoughts?
Yeah. I think the two are very much connected. Specifically, let's take that video, and you have the connection of her. We didn't have the audio, but she looked like she was being forced to do something. What, we don't know, but definitely forced to go back to that room, which, according to testimony, somebody was there for a freak off. So I could make the connection that she was trying to leave the freak off, and then Sean tried to bring her back through force, that the defense is describing as domestic violence, which, yes, it is domestic violence. They're an intimate partner relationship, domestic violence. That's what it means. But that's very much a connection to the coercion part of sex trafficking. So you really can't split the two. The force part is the beatings, the ones that we have seen, the ones that we've only heard about, just kind of always in the air that I'm feeling coerced, I'm feeling coerced, I'm feeling coerced. So that's where I see we can't really separate them as much as the defense would like to try. And guess what? What they're saying is true. That is domestic violence case, and that is not why we are here. However, the force part of it, I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to connect the dots if I'm a juror.
Amazing. The thing is, though, I don't understand why. Well, with Ferguson, right? Starting with him, we spent a whole day talking about all of these invoices and all of that, and it seemed that it only boiled down to the 20,000 that Diddy had Cassie's mother pay.
Mm.
Or did you see more?
No, and listen, while they did do a lot of build up to that point, they definitely laid the foundation that Sean was in charge. They were trying to show that there was an intermingling of his private life and Bad Boy, and that's what you need. You need that enterprise to be involved with that, which he was doing. And then you really got the receipts to Cassie Ventura's mother, Regina. And then as a juror, I'm reminded, that's right, her mom was on the stand a couple of weeks ago. Defense didn't even cross-examine her. They kind of just first of all, you can't cross-examine somebody's mom. That's very difficult to do. You can, but it's very difficult to do, right? Right? Can somebody really cross-examine your mom about you? Are you kidding me? Or your kids? No, they're perfect. Please don't go there. But what they did was they had the receipts to show that happened. That's extortion. I don't know if there's can you think of any other way to describe the fact that he got $20,000 from her mom and then gave it back just as a power play because she thought that these videos would be released? That's extortion.
Well,
So I think, yeah.
Some people in the courtroom, just observers, are saying, well, he sent the money back, so therefore there's nothing there. I even heard that on some of the bigger, networks saying that rational. What do you think?
Well, no, once extortion happens, it sticks. You can't reverse. You can't reverse your crime. You can't reverse conspiracy. You can't reverse slapping someone in the face. You can't reverse extortion. She was extorted. So what? He gave the money back. That's okay. It's just like saying, I can't believe you burglarized my house and you took this very expensive painting. Even if you give the painting back, you still burglarized my house. So think of it that way, folks. And that extortion has already stuck. You can't unring that bell. She was extorted. And I think that probably in his mind, I guess I'm pausing because he has so many people around him who obviously know how to do things, right? That's how he is. at one time was almost a billionaire. No, I don't know how he wasn't in contact with the right people. I don't know, it just seems painfully obvious. I mean, even if you give the money back, it's still extortion. All you have to do is ask one of your 20 attorneys, give them a plausible scenario. I don't know. He just seemed very free with what he was doing without any direction. But let's think about this too. And this is something that's crossed my mind as I thought about while being in the courtroom is, he actually was just a drug addict too. He was highly addicted. Am I right or wrong about that? Are you it's not just, oh, he did drugs and ecstasy. He was an addict. He is an addict. I don't know where he is now, but in September of last year when he was arrested, he's a hardcore addict, the way that we have to think about anybody else.
Yes. Well, I definitely have inside information that he has been clean. Obviously, he's been locked up.
Sure.
But that's the report. He's been clean since he's been locked up. So,
okay.
But before that, he's been, in fact, in the opening arguments, remember they said he had a major drug problem. He was beating her. But I still think, kind of like what Make It Make Sense was trying to say in the comments, you're beating people beyond the scope of domestic violence, or am I wrong? I thought domestic violence was people of your home or what have you. He's beating the chef. He's beating other employees. So how does that map up when it comes to the case?
Yeah, now you move her into assault and battery. You have to have an intimate relationship with this person. So there can be domestic violence, that some people might beat up their parents, for example. That's domestic violence. That sounds terrible. But you have to have some type of an intimate partner relationship of some sort. But there might be domestic violence, in the home. Well, you don't have to be lovers, is what I'm trying to say. When it comes to people who are workers that he's beating, like a Mia or a Capricorn, yeah, that is not domestic violence that we know. That's an employee being beat.
Deontay Nash, he was slapping Deontay Nash in the back of the head.
Yeah, you beating me up. So it's not a domestic violence situation. So that's the distinction.
Okay, so we're just going to take a pause here and just go through a few of the comments. People want to be heard. Everybody want to be heard. I want to be big on sharing that. Deborah is a strong supporter, and she says hi. Make It Make Sense is in the audience. He says, unfortunately, the jury practically slept through the experts. Jury fatigue is a sad reality in this case.
You know what? He is very right. We have to think about just the human element of these people. Think about us going to court and then going back home. But these people have missed all their family life all day. All their kids are trying to come sit on their laps. They're trying to go to a concert. Prom's coming. I don't know what these people have going on in their life, but then they have to go live life. When they leave at 3:00, they're tired. I remember once I was sitting in the overflow room and the two women on the side of me, they were knocked out. And I see the jurors have been tired too. And the security had to come around to them and say, hey, are y'all okay? I mean, the truth is that some points you get very tired. And so the jury too. I mean, that's just the attention span. In fact, you brought up with Derek Ferguson. Wow, they took a long time to get to their point. But they did get it. But just human nature, we're tired. Even when I covered Sean Combs in 2001 in the shooting trial, people were asleep in the booth. The attorneys, some of the attorneys were, remember with Trump even recently, was last year when he was in court, asleep. You had to shut it. Court is a long, arduous process, but for a reason, because you got to lay the foundation and get all the details.
Yeah, I attended Trump's trial too, and Trump was actually sleeping most of the time. I was fighting sleep, but they were going through so many of the legalities. It's very hard to follow. Whereas in this case, Capricorn Clark painted a movie about them walking to a warehouse. They locked the door behind her. She went to the 6th floor. There's a big guy sitting there smoking. He's 5 times wide as her. He's saying, listen, if you don't do this lie detector, pass it, we're going to throw your, I think he said B, we're going to throw you in the East River. So this is a movie. It's a movie. It's very easy to recite. You see how easy I went through that?
That's right.
Because they framed it like a movie. See what I'm saying? That's going to be a problem in the end for the jury because they're able to remember all these minute details, you see?
Right. And the more detail she gave, the more believable she was. And that's what, the prosecution was doing, because you want to, as a defense, trip them up. And they did not trip up Capricorn Clark. I mean, she was a stunning witness. And like you said, it was like reading notes on a movie scene. Like, what's going to happen? Describe the scene. She described it. She took us right there. I mean, I could
Yeah.
just see the guy drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette. As she said, 5 times bigger than she was. She really brought it home. She brought it home.
Amazing. And you see
Yeah.
that you just illustrated how we're both sitting there and we're picking up on different points. So that's why it's nice to hear from everybody else, because I totally forgot about the coffee part that stood out to you. That's the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful part about sharing what we heard. Uh, Bordox for now says, looking good, Mel. Thank you very much. Project Bemmers says, and why would be totally reaching? There is no RICO case. That's his viewpoint or her viewpoint.
No, listen, and let me say again, I could definitely see it not getting to RICO. I could
Okay.
definitely see it not getting to RICO. You have to look at those jurors. If you want to really do some sleuthing, look at those jurors, look at all their professions. Like, one's a financial analyst, one's a deli worker, one's a masseuse, one's an actor. If you want to go in there, go to the court and see for yourself. See if you can figure out what those jurors are thinking. Like, someone's always trying to guess, which one's the deli worker, which one's a, But the bottom line is that, you can kind of maybe get an idea of perhaps what the jurors are thinking based upon their, like a jury consultant, right? A jury consultant reads how people are going to decide. And I do not blame someone for thinking, hey, they're not going to get RICO. I could see that.
Okay, TJ says, will the judge prevent reporters from reporting on Jane's crossover concerns about her identity being exposed?
So I am sure that Judge Sumeranian is thinking about that very hard today, because the prosecution has already made it clear that they believe that what the reporters or bloggers have done by revealing Jane's identity online is prevent other people from being witnesses, right? Because we don't share the names of sexual assault victims because we re-traumatize them, not just in the courtroom, but now out in the public. And people are crazy. They come to your house, they get your information, and before you know it, they're saying, we're going to kill your kid. Oh, why? All I'm doing is testifying. I was subpoenaed, right? So I can definitely understand if the judge makes some type of proclamation to say, you know what, here's what we're going to do from now on. It's all up to him, because then this will set a major precedent from here on about what to do in these cases, because that is ridiculous that someone let out her name. You cannot do that. You're not supposed to do that. The judge gave what they call an admonition, which is tell everybody in the gallery, tell everybody in the jury. Well, I'm assuming they're not doing anything. Everybody, don't say anything about this person's name. Don't. And somebody did. And it doesn't matter if you're kind of, quoting somebody else. Well, according to such and such, they say that Jane is X. You're still just, by the law, as liable and as guilty as the first person who gave up that name. It's just the truth. It's just the law. I would not be surprised if the prosecutors are working hard to make something bigger than what we've already heard.
Now, what we saw in court on Friday, where her attorney stood up, Jane's attorney stood up and said, her client had been identified online. Is that normal for the personal attorney to come up and approach the court?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because you really want to protect the witness. The other thing that you don't want to have happen is, what if Jane, it would be a big deal, but what if this weekend Jane is like, I'm out. I can't believe that you guys said anything about my name. I'm afraid for my daughter's life. I think she's a daughter, right?
Yeah.
I'm very afraid. So what if she disappears because of this? Like, you never want to put your witness in jeopardy. So as a prosecution, you also haven't established a relationship with this witness. They've told you all this information. And as we've heard many times, it's not the first time, right? You have to build a rapport. That's why we hear a lot of witnesses Well, you didn't tell them on the first, second, or third time. Well, I don't know who this prosecutor is. I don't know Maureen Comey, but they built this relationship. So of course, Maureen or anybody else is going to go back for this witness because they have built a rapport, a trust for at least a year now that I'm going to protect you. So she had to say something, and of course she did the right thing.
All right. Bordox for now says, good point, Candace. Make it make sense says violence against an employee when we were talking about the kitchen incident, beating the chef and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Project Bemmer says her text messages to him say otherwise. She was a willing participant of the freak-offs.
And we're talking about Jane.
Yes.
Right. So let me ask you this, Mel. I honestly, going into the next week, I'm not sure who asked that question. I'm kind of sort of where she is. I want to see some more. You've got these texts, and we can talk about there's a fraud issue. I know you're going to bring that up, but I guess if I were a juror, I would say, well, there were even some times where Sean said, "You don't have to do this." Do you remember that, Mel?
Yeah, he said it several times. You don't have to do it.
He said it several times. You don't have to do this.
You know what I told someone leaving court?
What?
I said the prosecutors cross-examined their own witness.
Yeah,
and you know why I said that?
Why?
Is because she told this story, and what's been happening with every witness, guys, in court. The first day, because it tends to go into the second day. So the first day, the victim comes in and they tell these horrible stories about what happened to them, and then people go out and they can't wait to report it. The next day, under cross-examination, we start to question the witness and the victim in many cases. So then they lose a little steam, right?
That's right.
Okay, but in this particular case for Jane, she told her story. Then the prosecutors led her through these examples. I think they were trying to get ahead of the defense, right?
Yes.
But she's setting up an all-star freak-off with 3 different men. Like, why bring that out of her? Why not let the defense take care of that instead of having her tell that during her direct?
Yeah, I guess, well, you never want to be on the defense, number one. That's with anything. In a divorce, right? You never want to be the one receiving the papers. You never want to be the one in the defense situation.
Right.
But boy, have they not made their point yet that this is going to be worth something of value for us as a prosecution, in my estimation. One of the things that stood out was that she was in this relationship for a couple of years, and then her rent started getting paid. So as she was talking about, he was holding the rent payment over my head kind of talk.
Right.
She was already in it for 2 years. Granted, there were other things, but it didn't make sense to me that she was making that point and trying to connect. And then that's just when you start saying, okay, where are we going? I don't know where we're going. We'll know next week. She's supposed to be on Monday and Tuesday. So hopefully we will see what the prosecution is trying to do. And I'm not saying yay or nay against, I'm for or against. I'm saying, prosecution, what are you doing in telling me this story? Because right now, it's not a good story. I'm going to another chapter. On Monday, I think that they're going to try to give us a little bit more, because so far we have, and I don't know, speak to a lot of your male friends, what we have so far, in some people's estimations, and I'm not saying it's mine, I'm thinking, I'm a juror, is a girl who got in a relationship. She got a whole lot out of it. Money, clothes, living expenses, housing. And he told her many times, you don't have to do this. And she kept saying yes. However, let's go back to Dawn Hughes, right? She is our forensic psychologist.
Right.
Just to talk about it and contextualize, I still don't see her as being as strong as some of the other witnesses. There was a point in Mia's testimony where I got, this is feeling like a cult. Now, we haven't heard anything about that, but for her to go through that and still just, I love you, Merry Christmas, Happy birthday, and she was, she was right here, she was even on the stand, she just, felt kind of cultish. It felt kind of like, woo. as she said, brainwashed. That's what came to my mind too. I do not get brainwashed on Jane yet. I do not get no domestic violence, right? We're connecting the dots on that, so more to come.
All right. Make It Make Sense says Diddy might be watching the broadcast and hire you as the for his lawyer.
He might be watching the broadcast and what?
And hire you as the attorney.
Oh. Hey, he definitely has the opportunity to watch. What does he get? A certain amount of phone calls, and then he gets a certain amount of, I'm not sure about his TV, but I only get 300 minutes a month. Yeah, well, interesting. Well, thank you for that.
Okay, Mr. TJ says Diddy is cooked.
Well, on one count, definitely he is. Sure. Yeah. I'm thinking, and let's contextualize cooked. Cooked means he could go to jail for 5 years. We already broke that down, serving really 2 years in real time. Cooked is really going to be determined when he gets out of jail. What's his life going to look like? That's when he knows whether or not he's really, really cooked. And I'm saying, again, if he just gets a light punishment for one of these lower level, cooked would mean a life of just being a nobody, awash, disconnected from society, done kind of on a Bill Cosby level, right? Granted, he's much older, but he hasn't gone out there and tried to do stand up, or he's not making his rounds on talk shows. I'm wondering to what level outside of this, guilty or innocent, what will that look like? So I see cooked on 2 levels. One, yes, he's probably going to get sentenced, but what will his life look like if he comes out at 65? Some people are still doing their thing at 65 to 95, but will society accept him? And who will he be?
Right. Okay, so let's talk about Bonna. Bonna was a very significant witness this week. She told a pretty amazing story about being hung over the balcony, right? Everybody was shocked about that. How do you think she felt, or how she did under cross-examination?
I was not. She's one of those where I'm like, oh yeah, there was Bonna, I gotta say. Because yes, you had the balcony incident, but I'm not sure if she was anybody besides that particular incident, because there were so many drugs involved. Again, you have this theme of drugs, so you've got everybody making bad decisions, right? So I'm not sure if she was, one for the money for the prosecution at all. I just have to be honest. But the stories that she told, they showed a pattern. They show coerciveness. They did rise to the occasion to at least show that, hey, it's not just these 3 victims that we are seeing who are mentioned in the indictment. It's other people. So that pattern of, the personal assistant or the personal stylist or the chef or all that, it showed a pattern. And I think that she added in that way. Otherwise, she was not one of the people that's on the top of my list where I'm like, yeah, we really, that right there, all of that, that's what goes to these charges. I think many other people are much stronger to make the case. And you only need one, right? When we're talking about sex trafficking, just you need one time of coercion. So I would be looking to other people to make the case.
What did you think about the fact that the prosecutors had met with her 2 days previously and she testified she didn't recall what she said? And they gave her immunity, by the way. So
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I thought that was interesting, but let's think about a person who's in the center of an international trial with a very, very important human being. And think about all of the details that you have to remember. It might start kind of merging. When you are preparing a witness, like I have been prepared to be a witness for 8 hours, 16 hours. And I'm not a main witness. I'm just an expert witness. She's gone through way more. She's tired. She's confused. I don't know anything about her and her medical condition. I have no idea. I mean, I'm going to give it to her that sometimes that happens, that she does not remember things. But because of based upon the knowledge that I know, that's okay. However, you're probably, attorneys do train you on certain things. She just didn't rise to the level of occasion where her memory served her well. And I could see that happening. It's a lot. Her head is spinning. Our heads are spinning and we're just sitting there. You know what I mean, Mel? Right? There are a couple times I've been like, yeah, I can leave for the day. I'll read, some, because it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And I'm trying to beat that traffic. Let's be real. Go ahead.
Yeah. What about the lady that stood up with all the commotion? It really went viral. She was ready to take on all the marshals. She wanted all the smoke, right?
Number one in line, Mel. First of all, you've seen her outside. Who is this woman? I know you have had interactions with her. You need to break that. We've all seen her.
Right.
But I'm sure but you have talked to her.
Yeah, I talk to her quite frequently. She thinks that this should be set free because she feel like this is something that against Black men at large.
Yeah.
And she felt like people are in the courthouse laughing at Diddy. So she wanted to express herself. But let me tell you what set her off. She was sitting there. She had a hat on in court. Yeah. I guess she was self-conscious. So one of the marshals was really hard on her. And that really ticked her off. And so she sat there. She was stewing. She's actually come on the channel before. So,
okay.
And all of a sudden she said, I'm out of here. And then she started to yell out what she thought about Diddy. Diddy even turned around. He was nodding his head and so forth.
I'm sure he made her day.
But the marshal said that they went easy on her. But if she was a man, they would have went another direction. So
yeah, she was an older woman. And I remember somebody was in court and it was a mint. This marshal went off on him like he had, kicked his favorite dog. You would have thought, he was like, I told you. I was like, wow. And he literally just kind of chewed a mint. You can't chew, you can't drink, you can't have on your hat, you can't talk, you can't do anything. If you're trying to do anything besides just sit there and look ahead, you got to leave to do it. You can't even, pop a small pretzel. No, not a mint, not an Advil, nothing. So yeah, they were kind to her because I've seen them go off on someone chewing a mint, and went off. Poor guy turned red. He was like, I told you. Like, what else do I have to tell you? He was going off. I was like, well, those are the rules of the court. You have to follow them.
Yeah, they're very adamant about certain things. You know what I don't like about the court? Each marshal tells you something different. One says you can have something, the other one says no. I don't understand why they don't have a set rule.
Yeah, well, the guy in the main court, he's been pretty consistent when I've been in there. The spillover room, totally different. Right. I've been in the front row eating my pretzels with my hat on, and nobody says anything. But then sometimes you'll get another person that will say, take the hat off, and no talking. Or often we're just talking through. That's the fun part about the overflow room, that you can kind of check in on what they say. Oh, okay. Her rent is still being paid. Like with Jane, I was like, what? Her rent is still being paid by Diddy? That was kind of crazy, right?
Right. Absolutely.
The fact that a witness we are watching right now, Jane, her rent of $10,000, because that means it was just paid in June. That's like a few days. Her rent's still being paid. I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you think that even translates to? Like, if I'm on the jury, I'm confused. Because if I paid the rent, I'm hoping maybe that would have kept you away, but I'm looking at you in the witness stand.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking. Almost like when Cassie said that she had got an additional 10 million, people were like, you're still getting paid? Wow, that's amazing,
Right. Yeah, a lot of shockers.
Mission Hill lady says, may I ask, why is Sean Combs the only defendant?
Well, there are a couple of things that could be going on. Number one, he could be the only defendant because there are some unsealed indictments of people that we don't know about. Think about KK, think about D-Rock. We don't know because they're sealed. They remain sealed. I think I said unsealed. There are sealed documents, sealed indictments. The other thing is that maybe the co-conspirators along the way might have been let's see, who could have been on the stand? Pick anybody. Anybody could have been a co-conspirator, but they made deals. Therefore, they were not, a part of this case. but there might be something sealed that we don't know about, and we don't know about it because it's sealed. So it can work. The other thing too is, remember, RICO was created to get the crime boss or the boss, all right? So that, and it was created specifically to close that loophole because the crime bosses were getting away. All they want is Sean, because without Sean, you don't have the rest of the branches of the tree. So this is working out just the way that it was intended. It looks a little different in terms of, it's not the Gambino family, but it's the exact same thing.
Well, something to really think about. So let's get into Jane, the final witness of the week. What's your overall thoughts about her testimony after hearing toward the end of the day that she was actually kind of participating and also wanting to please Diddy by setting up more freak-offs? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think through her so far, what they have gotten, as I've said, is paying for the prostitutes crossing state lines. She's taken us to different parts of the world. I think the other thing, and you mentioned this to me, and I was going back and looking at some notes online from other people, they talked about this whole idea of fraud. Now, this is very, and you should probably explain it, because I know that you were actually there in the room, in terms of her writing some notes to herself that Sean keeps kind of tricking her into thinking that they're going to do one thing, and it actually comes out to be another thing.
Right.
And that being the case for fraud. What do they say in court? Because it happened at the end of the day.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the prosecutors brought up that actually the defense brought up that 2 exhibits were added, 331, I think DX 331. And basically, these exhibits are Jane's personal notes to self by means of diary or what have you. And it goes toward the status of mind or frame of mind, whatever that legal term is, right?
Yes.
And in the writing, she says he's a pathological liar. And so the defense says they're trying to introduce these 2 exhibits to show that he committed fraud. He defrauded her by saying, hey, come, you and I, we're going to have a romantic night, restaurants, wine and dine. And then when she would arrive, like when she talked about when she came to the hotel, I believe at Trump Towers, she looked up in the room and she saw those red lights. She knew it was going to be a freak off, right? So it's deceptive. It's like, hey, babe, come see me. But then when you get here, you have to have sex with these strange men, as they were saying.
Right. Now, in other contexts, we might look at that as, oh my goodness, I can't believe he did that to her. But does that rise to the level of some type of a criminal standard? In the context, the argument that they're making is he is lying in order to get her to do something illegal. And that's how he got her there. So it's not as clear as kind of like, oh my goodness, coercion, fraud, the way that we, like a bad check. It's more of it's a lie that got somebody to do something. Think of it this way. We've heard about these scam artists online. They're generally men who lie online in order to get women's money, especially to the tunes of millions. A lot of them are traced back to, certain parts of the country, like in Africa, and they train people, right? And it's just that lie. Look at it this way. When is one lie too much, right? Is it the one lie in the court of law? That's what's enough. It's not, oh, he just lied once. Well, it just takes that once that was fraudulent. You lied in order to get her to a certain point. Similarly, when do we say, hey, this guy has tricked this lady out of his money on the first lie, second lie? No, he should be impugned because that first lie, he's lying originally to get all of her money. He's just building her up with lies. And that's how we have to, or the court will look at him. He's lying in order to get her to do something, the same way a scam artist might do in a romantic relationship. And that legally is a problem. Otherwise, if you're just with your girlfriends or if you're with your friends, you'd be like, oh, that girl's a liar. I can't believe that she. But in this context, you just have to think of it differently. And we talk about relatability. I think that there's some huge issues of relatability here because we have to start thinking legally as opposed to, what are you talking about? So he gave her a watch of $10,000 and they had sex. Well, legally, it looks a little different. And he didn't give her a watch. He did give her $10,000. But I'm just saying, in general, when you give somebody something and happen to get sex on the other end, that's different when you're sitting at your home in Brooklyn or Los Angeles. But in law, that's going to look a little different. And that's what we're looking at.
So check this out. Remember for the All-Star night, she was trying to set up and they were trying to find a worker, a sex worker?
Yes.
And Diddy told her, he says, RICO is available. And she didn't know when she was being asked. She didn't know if he was saying he's RICO or that a sex worker was named RICO. Mm-hmm. But dig this. The feds gave him a RICO.
I knew you were going there. Exactly. I was like, that was the wrong name.
Be careful what you ask for, right?
Yeah. RICO's available, all right.
It wasn't the RICO he wanted, though.
Yeah. And I can definitely understand. Another reason that woman got mad when she was being left court, when she was taken out of court and screaming, she said, they're laughing at you. This is your legacy. And, I understood what she was saying because it is easy to kind of chuckle at it. But for a man who's got 6 kids, built up this empire and had a dream and superseded everything probably that he thought he could have ever done, this is an unfortunate and sad case for someone who has framed a lot of our childhoods. And even now, in terms of the music and the culture, yeah, I mean, am I yelling in the middle of court like that woman? No, but listen, the people who come down there, especially the public, they are hardcore Diddy fans. I mean, they could be anywhere else. They don't have YouTube channels, anything, just want to support. And I see that side too. It's like, wow.
Yeah, a lot of people are definitely supporting Diddy. And let me tell you, I went on Law and Crime this week and they only asked me about the morning. Very specific questions, probably about 10 minutes all, right?
Okay.
But I answered and I said that Brian Steele did a great job defending Diddy against this particular victim or witness. Oh, they went crazy. Oh, you're a Diddy fan. I'm like, you guys, if you go to my channel, you'll see over the broad scope of the trial, I have not been a Diddy fan. I've just been hitting you with the points that's happening in court. But people are very conscious about this whole case, and they really want to jump at you if you jump 1 inch apart from what they expect you to do. So, it's very interesting. But let me tell you, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that on that note, when we do talk about the defense, and they are doing a great job too, as best as they can. They are kings and queens of objections, which is good. Though as a juror, I'm like, wow, all right, that's a lot of objections. What are they trying to stop getting? It could go over into why are they objecting so much? What do they not want me to hear? But when you're a good attorney, you are objecting over and over again. You are just on your feet. The other thing that they're doing a very good job on, and that is cross and impeaching the witness and you can really make a witness think, oh, wait, did that happen or not? They're doing a very good job at that. And Brian Steele is very good at that because I have stood with some women in line who are like, I'm here for Brian Steele, in a way that was kind of googly-eyed. Like, they really like his style. They like everything about him. They talked about how he exercises in court, which he does. He does his stretches. He's got some very good fans. And when you have that charisma and charm, it's good to have them in front of a witness and be your defense attorney. So, yes.
Oh my, what a nice segue you just did into the fact that the judge came down on Diddy for trying to communicate to the jury. Talk to us about it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have said to you before and to other stations, no matter what you're doing, you sitting there, you're testifying. Like, you're saying something by the way you move, the way you act, the way you dress, the way your hair. After he got his hair cut, he looked like a lot more with it and kind of, together as opposed to downtrodden. But the fact You cannot be distracting in the courtroom. No one can, period, or else you go. And that includes the defendant. And that is especially the defendant, because what you see, or what the judge saw, was him working his charm. Again, this is what the judge says he saw. He's working his charm, and a point that came up where the witness looked like they didn't quite have their story together, him shaking his head like this is kind of like, yeah, I told you so. See, she don't know what she's talking about. That is what the judge is saying was happening, and that the jurors were also responding. Now let's talk about those jurors. Those jurors often respond. There are a couple specifically who will look to the gallery where we're sitting like, So very active. Am I right? Right? They are.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
When it's interesting, the jury is very active anyway. But what I mean, all of it should stop. All of it should stop. And so he gave him a warning. I don't know if it was his first or second, but he gave him a warning, and everybody shaped up. Even the people in the jury shaped up. And that is fair. No distractions. Because once you give somebody the free reign to say something, who knows? You know, maybe you could turn into him doing gestures. He had to cut it off. He had to.
Yeah, you want to hear something pretty cool?
Yeah.
The marshals in the courtroom watched this channel, and they were talking about you. They said that they love you, having you come on. So that's amazing.
Oh, really?
They watch different channels. I guess they see different people, or whatever. But they did comment about that.
Oh, that's
also
nice.
The prosecutors, they've been looking at channels too, because that's how they determine that people are bringing up the names of the victims here that they told not to, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say this for prosecutors and defense, again, we're slightly more informed because we go to these cases. I teach the law and all that. The prosecution has made its case for me. So, but again, I wouldn't be on that jury because of what I know. Could I have a clean slate with Sean Combs? That's a really good question. You know, I specialize, and I've been on domestic violence response team. You probably wouldn't want me on having help, victims of domestic violence. So I'm not the one, but I'm telling you right now that once you give me that paper where it says, okay, did he do this? Did he do this? And did he do that? It has nothing to do with how I feel about him. I can honestly still put on Faith Evans this afternoon when I go for a walk. Okay, let's just start there. But that sheet, they've already crossed that bridge. We're already, I mean, it's just, the jury could decide otherwise. I'm just saying that based upon what I've been shown in court and that evidence that they've corroborated with other people, because otherwise then you're telling me, okay, everybody's lying. Everybody's lying about, I'm not even going to give them arson. I wouldn't give them arson. I could see how a juror could go either way. And yes, Sean Combs does not have to be the one throwing the Molotov cocktail. But I could still say, but there's a little doubt. On the outside, I think so. I think it's arson. As a juror, I could say, okay, I'm not going to give him that one. But even besides that, you're already there. You're already there.
Yeah. Let me tell you something from my experience. From being in court every day and hearing each witness, a picture gets painted, right? So let me tell you how Jane became convincing, just for a small bit at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jane started in 2020. Cassie goes back at least 10 years prior.
Okay.
Cassie calls the nights freak offs.
That's right.
By the time Jane comes on the scene, they're called debauchery nights, right?
Right.
Now, here's another point.
And hotel nights, right?
And hotel nights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's another point. When Diddy was arrested, they brought out the Homeland Security's agent.
Yes.
And they show that there's these lights that are in the room that they're using, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cassie talked about the candles.
That's right.
Now, Jane is talking about these red lights.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an evolution that's happening over the years. And Jane is telling that story when she identifies certain parts of the story. And it makes it very believable just from that minute aspect.
You're right, right. Like we see that consistency
Right.
of that. But what do we see the consistency of? Prostitution, or do we also see coercion? Do you see coercion with Jane so far?
Yes, they explain the coercion because basically they're painting a picture. She
Psychological?
right, but
Yes.
remember too, her friend was making 4 million a year doing OnlyFans. So she
Sure.
goes to Puff after he's basically taken away her streams of income. This is the picture they're painting.
Yes.
Okay. Oh my God, we got a. Oh, anyway, we'll get there. We have some people wanting to come up. This should be exciting.
Okay.
But he says no, he doesn't want her doing that. So now her income is locked. She says she's only, I believe, getting child support.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they're trying to build this coercion.
Yeah, I see that. What I think on cross, defense is going to say, well, how much are you getting from child support from the father of your child? And you're getting 10,000. I don't know. That cross, you better be the first in line for that. They're going to bring her down. And I don't mean that like in hopes of. I'm saying that there are a lot of doors open for them to come in and say, what are you talking about? And they're going to do it very politely. If it's Nicole, it won't be so polite because we know how Nicole works, right? As someone who works her cross. But that being said, I think that's a wait and see. But you've made some really good
What
points
are you
about her
doing?
with coercion.
Okay, all right. So thank you for that explanation. I really appreciate it. And
Sure.
you're definitely on top of your game. We have Make It Make Sense. We're going to have a question I surmise.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
good. How are you doing?
I'm okay now that I have like some fresh air outside of the courtroom.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. We're all on that bandwagon.
So specifically, if you are requesting sex from someone and there is a pattern of you either forcing, giving, or suggesting that they do drugs, is that not coercive? Or would that fall under coercion?
That would definitely fall under coercion in that. And again, this could be interpreted because if you're saying yes to drugs, let's just start to think of it this way. I'm sober now, so right now I'm saying yes in my sober state. I had the option to say no. That's one thing that the jury is going to think about. Well, were they coerced? Because couldn't she have just said no? Couldn't he have just said no? That's the one thing. But now that I'm under drugs, maybe it was slipped to me because of some of them, the witnesses were saying, yeah, then all of a sudden I felt like I was out of it and then woke up in this state. So it could go either way, depending upon how the drugs were consumed, if you will. I can imagine that would be a point of, could be not. So the coercion, I think, comes in where you have someone saying, listen, I'm sick. I've spit up. It's that time of the month. I don't want to do it. Oh no, you still do it. You still do it. And then she's under the influence of drugs. That's more coercive. She's told you no, but you keep on at me. And now I find myself doing it with a third person for the night.
Well, I mean, Jane was a willing sexual partner, but at the inception of the relationship with Cassie, she was an employee.
True.
I believe she was 21 years old, and she testified that on their first trip that he set up for like some promotional event that didn't exist, he gave her ecstasy as her boss. She
That's
also
right.
says that he forced a kiss on her in which she cried and ran away. So I think Jane might be a tougher sell, but at least for Cassie, you have an employee who you gave drugs to and then forced some type of sexual assault on.
Agreed. Cassie is a totally different story. But then here's the question, and I'm wondering how you feel about this. Do you think that overall, that jury by and large will believe Cassie? I think so. I'm just wondering, your opinion. Do you think because from her, we get all the other branches have to trickle down from this tree that hopefully is rooted enough so that all the branches feel like they're connected. But I'm not sure if the jury will see her as being rooted enough, and I'm wondering about your opinion.
That's why I love to talk to everybody. You know, I talk to Mel, I talk to Gloria Allred, I'll talk to her daughter, and then I'll talk
Yes.
to 5 lay people who are just in the court because there's energy around this case and they want to be here for this historic event. And I always juxtapose what they're saying. So legal analysts can say a lot, but legal analysts aren't in the jury.
That's right.
So it's
That's
a mixed
right.
bag.
And that's the big difference. It is. It really is a mixed bag. I thought that most of her testimony, I'm trying to think, okay, as a layperson, they laid a foundation slowly enough and thoroughly enough for me to say, yeah, she's telling the truth. She's telling the truth. You know, she even got $10 million from the Intercontinental Hotel. All right, she's telling everything. She's telling us some really disgusting, intimate facts. She's telling the truth. I can't imagine that they wouldn't have believed almost all of her testimony. I mean, maybe some, you know, okay, but you were a willing partner. That's how relationships work at first, right? Okay, well, let's try this, let's try that. Whatever the trying it may be, we've got different thresholds within our relationship. But then it got to a point where she was like, I don't want to do this. And then when her mama came, I thought, that is what sealed the deal for me. Okay, not only are you telling me that I'm not safe within my confines, in my, 6 feet of people around me, but I'm not even safe at home at my mama's. Because you've got her running, getting a mortgage, a second mortgage,
Right.
a loan. So that spoke to me. I was like, ooh, now you're going home to her mom and her dad. And then they showed receipts too with Ferguson this week. So I think that I left Cassie thinking, but then by the time it built, even as a juror, I would say, now it's all making sense. Now it's all making sense. Otherwise, everybody's lying. And that can't be it. We're not here. Spend everybody, he probably spends what Sean Combs maybe $3-4 million a month on this case. Some of those he's probably spending $100,000 a day with 9 attorneys all day.
While, mind you, I notice everything. I have like hypervigilance, so very few things get past me. So when I'm in the courtroom, I notice everything. I can tell you that the far left attorney, who is a black man, was shopping for a BMW during the trial.
Wow.
He was shopping for a BMW. Yeah.
I tell you, if you're getting paid $1,200 an hour, well, after one day of putting in, 15 hours, yeah, you're writing in whatever you really want to write around in. Wow, you know everything, Mr. Make It Make Sense. But yeah, I think that definitely the prosecution is doing its job. But I say all that to say, I haven't even heard from the defense yet. And we know
I think the defense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
The defense is playing too. I think it's more. It feels softball. There's no way that I would not have more white women on that jury. There's no way. If there were more white women, I would say this was a shoo-in. But you have quite a few black males, and then you have one older Caucasian male who doesn't even seem to be taking notes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's a mixed bag. I say this: if there is even one man on that jury who has ever hired an escort, we're in mistrial territory. There's no way.
Right.
There's no way that someone who's in this lifestyle would ever convict Diddy, because then that changes the laws for everyone.
Right. I see what you're saying. We also have a lot of people that are older. Most of them are between the ages of 40 and 68. So yeah, but then again, you never know what someone's thinking. You really don't. I'm sure that you've looked at a lot of the jurors. There are some, a couple of times, who clearly seem to say, that's a good point made, that Sean is innocent. I've seen it. Doesn't mean that that's what they're ultimately going to decide, but you do have some people who are kind of sympathetic to him at some points.
So listen, I just want to, we have a lot of people in the audience. Please hit the like button, share, and subscribe if you like the material. We typically do a show every week to do a recap, and we're also going to be working on other cases as time go on. I have a question for the both of you, since both of you have been attending court with me every day.
Mm-hmm.
Did they say that Ray J, the celebrity, was the drug supplier or a guy named Ray J? How did you interpret that? That was
I'll let
selling.
the expert go first.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Considering the fact that they had somebody named Rico, I honestly did not, one way or the other. It didn't seem to have anything to do with it, so I didn't really study it, and
Okay.
it doesn't have anything to do with it. But I could see the interest in it because we all know a Ray J that is a celebrity, so it didn't stick with me because they didn't make a point of it, or else they would have made a point of it if it had anything to do with it.
Right. Okay.
I see it a little bit differently.
Okay.
I see it as the defense is playing this out in the court of public opinion in the media. Mentioning Ray J was equivalent to them mentioning a Me Too money grab and then spelling out the name of Mia's attorney. It was a direct shot at anybody who follows and or supports Trump, because now we have the Me Too money grab in the jury's mind, along with how to spell the name of her attorney, so you can look it up and see who her attorney is specifically. That's playing it out in the media. Saying Ray J's name, also very flashy, but what really stuck out to me was the fact that the witness did not unequivocally say it's not that person. Because if it's not Ray J, the singer, then you would have easily said it's not the same person. She did not say that. So I was like, okay. Plus, Nicole is super impressive to me.
Right, yeah. No, that's true. And I guess out of all of this, you have to think, okay, court of public opinion. I'm just thinking about a couple of things you just said. Court of public opinion versus what are the jurors actually saying, right? Because the court of public opinion, they shouldn't be out in the public discussing this or knowing about the public's opinion, number one. They should be going home and everything, head down. And you're right. Ray J or not, though, I just don't see that. Could it have any bearing? I don't think it just has any bearing. That's all. But I see you're right in that she didn't say, and this is a different Ray J, because there have been times where witnesses have gotten on there and said, oh, I don't mean this person. I mean this. They've made that distinction, and that person did not make that distinction. So I see your point.
Yeah, had it been the prosecutors, they would have pulled up the photo exhibit number 929 and says, okay, can you identify this person? Yeah. That's so
exactly.
The defense is doing a very good job. Someone had asked earlier, I'm trying to find the actual question, but they wanted to know if Diddy was taking the stand. Yeah, it says the legacy. Will Diddy take the stand? What do you think?
Woo! I'd rather hear from y'all on this. I have a theory.
I think. Go ahead. You can go first. Go ahead.
No. Go for it, Mel.
I think if the defense feel like they're losing and losing bad or in any way, I think they're going to have to, as a last ditch effort, perhaps get him on the stand. If you have KK come, who is his right hand woman,
yeah,
and she lay it down, he might get into a box where he has to fight and come out swinging to try to preserve his freedom, because this, at the end of the day, this is only Diddy's freedom, not anyone else's. So I think it's quite possible.
I was going to say something similar. I really feel it depends on who else flips. I've been saying that James Cruz is paramount, and people are like, he's a bit player, but no, he was the president of marketing for Bad Boy, and he was already included in one of the civil lawsuits way prior to the downfall of Diddy. And that lawsuit included sexual assault against an employee. So if he comes in and actually paints the picture that he had to do some of these things because it was his boss, and that's how you move up in the company, because that's what I've heard. It's not just about your, ability to do your job. It's your ability to keep a secret and participate in a way that he deems fit. If James is effective at painting that picture, I think Diddy is done for, and the icing on the cake is KK. then it would
Then
force
that is
his
some
hands out to
heavy.
testify.
All right. Hey, guys, we have an attorney, Tillman, in the audience that says, great job to all of you.
Hello. Well, let me tell you.
right.
So the reason why I think I'm going to go back, he took the stand in 2001 when I covered his trial. The reason he did it is because, according to Shine, well, he was always going to be the fall guy. So it didn't hurt him because he felt like he's going to take the fall for this, and that was the plan. But that was a surefire thing. If it's a surefire thing, just like you two are saying that, okay, we're losing, then I would imagine that he would say, all right, last ditch effort. Worst advice ever, because he's going to have to face his apology tape. He's going to have to face all of this. You've heard from victims and witnesses that can't remember what they said 2 days ago. He's got to go back to 2004 and justify or not justify all these things. He will not be a successful witness. That is a very difficult thing to do. He's already apologized for Cassie. That's what started all of this. I mean, they're already winning anyway. I don't think he's going to take the stand. Can you refute that he crossed several people across state lines to pay them for money? Was he going to do? Refute every single person that took the stand? I don't know if it would make sense. That's all.
Right. So the next question, and this will be the final one before we shut down. I know I held you long enough. What did you think about Ferguson's testimony when they talked about some of these big corporations that were involved in Diddy's business affairs? I think they talked about Diageo and some other corporations that had maybe a 40% interest in his in the board.
Yeah. So off the top of my head, I think that really highlighted to me that when we talk about a business enterprise, that we're not just talking about Sean Combs, that we're talking about other people. And I can't remember if this came out, but there was a $15 million marketing monies that Sean Combs has when he was doing things for other people, like the liquor brands. I don't know. I guess were they trying to show that there was a lot of intermingling and that it wasn't just. I don't know. I got from that was Bad Boy the only one involved in some of these things, not legally, but that it wasn't just a Bad Boy decision.
Right. So what I walked away from, Mims, you want to go first?
Not in terms of Ferguson, but I reviewed all of the civil lawsuits. And
Yes.
A running theme in those lawsuits are that there were much larger corporations at play who provided the money for him to live this lifestyle and look other way. So, I mean, not necessarily from Ferguson, and that's all lost on the jury because they don't know anything about the other 150 lawsuits. I don't feel like that would move the needle for the average person on that jury.
Agreed.
I just don't.
Let me tell you what I picked up on just from observing and hearing. The prosecutors are trying to paint Diddy as running an enterprise, like a one-man band. He has control of his security guards. And by the way, if they pull in one of those guys and they back up anything one of these victims says, I don't see a way forward of a win on the defense side. I think if D-Rock, Paulie, any of these bonds, they come on, which these guys have been very verbal on Valid TV or whatever, Balad TV, what have you, I think it's going to make it more difficult. But anyway, getting back to my answer, the prosecutors are trying to paint him as a one-man band enterprise, right? But Ferguson, when they broke it down, you get to see that in many cases, Diddy couldn't make these decisions because all these other big players, these big companies that he had started to sue, they had decision-making ability or all the decision making for his companies. You see what I'm saying? So it takes away the argument that he's the only person here just doing all these things. That's what I picked up from it.
Mel, that's bull.
I'm think
sorry.
So?
It's bull. And the reason that Ferguson's testimony didn't really move me in any direction is because the feds didn't They're asking about baby oil purchases, whereas this man would have known where the bodies were buried. And instead of giving us some type of aha moment, it was very minimal. It was very safe.
Wait, but what about the extortion money? I mean, I think that they sealed that up and said the $20,000 came through to Regina Ventura.
Yes, but
I think that was solid.
I'm sitting there as a juror, and I'm like, okay, it didn't. I try to put myself in the place of the juror, and I don't feel like it was. I feel like it was spelled out because you're an expert to you. I didn't feel it in the courtroom. I was waiting for like some type of tax evasion, or when you hear that you're gonna get a CFO, it didn't move me. Logically,
I felt. Listen, all right, we got the evidence of the $20,000 going to Regina. That is extortion. That is a predicate crime.
But we're talking about a billionaire. I guess.
Well, it has nothing to do with how much, in my estimation, nothing to do with how much that money meant to him. It's how much that money meant to Regina, and for her mother she didn't say she took it out of the bank, right? She had to get a loan. So it was a lot of money. It could have been the equivalent of Sean Combs' 10 million or $1 billion. A lot to her, where she felt compelled enough to go, husband, fill out the paperwork, go to the bank, get a loan, come back home, take the money, get the transaction, get it to him to make sure. That's a lot to just say,
that's not lost on me at all. It's not lost on me at all. What I'm saying is Ferguson's testimony, for those hours that we sat through it, outside of that.
You are right.
It's not moving. It's not. I mean,
you're right. Agreed.
Yes, it's definitely not moving the needle. But I think that the defense was trying to show that these other big companies, had like a 40% interest, and they could control Diddy's organizations. You see what I'm saying?
Right. So you're saying, Mel, you see a little bit of doubt, and that's all we need is a little bit of reasonable doubt to get a juror to say, not so much.
Yeah, because they painted him as a one-man enterprise, that he's controlling everybody. But now they show these outside forces. I think that's their angle that they were going for.
I see. I like that point.
One last thing before we leave, though, I forgot to touch on Mike Piazza. So you guys, in summation, maybe you could bring out Mike Piazza. What did you think about his testimony as far as the video and the discrepancies?
Hey, I think he cleared up a lot, and my contention has always been, first of all, just speaking in terms of him being, witness and doing his job. I think he did that. On the other hand, I don't think it matters whether it was, it does in terms of legal standards, but whether it was sped up, slowed down, I think their original speed actually made Sean Combs look worse, because it showed that he had more time to make a decision, yes or no. Let me kick her again. Let me grab her again. Let me drag her again. The other looked like it was very fast, and it was just, he was making these crazy decisions. This, slowing it down made him look more pensive and made him look even more guilty. But the bottom line is that they were able to see the tape at the regular speed. He did his job, and that was fine. But at the end of the day, still beat that girl. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand that it was much more effective to do it towards the end of their witnesses, because now you're looking at the tape again and you're having to look at the tape over and over again. So that was pretty much the only thing I got from his testimony. Again, I do feel like, no offense, the 6-pack of white women are.
Now, why are you using that?
No.
I know that's what was said by Tinny's dad. But it's so funny. Do you listen? Anytime you're dealing with the justice system, race always plays a part. I'm sorry, there's no way around it. Ain't no way. I am wondering though, in this particular case, have you seen it rear its head? I remember it did during jury selection, but other than that, we have inside of the courtroom stayed away from race being articulated, right?
that's the that's the thing about legacy media versus new media. I don't have to parse my words. For
Right,
me
right, right.
personally, I do not like Diddy, but my subscribership knows that they're gonna get an unbiased opinion from me. What
Yeah.
I was going to say is the prosecution is missing a certain amount of flash, and although they might be spot on and they've done everything by the book, if you notice, my two favorites are Nicole and Comey.
Uh-huh.
If you have an objection for Comey, you need to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, because more than likely you're going to be overruled. She's just like her father. Like, it's so methodical. However, they are missing a bit of flash. And like, to Mel's point, if the prosecution wants to get you, they're going to have an exhibit. They don't
True.
necessarily have to have an exhibit with the defense, because they have imprinted in you whatever they want you to think. Like the judge said, you're asking these questions that you know are improper. I'm
Right.
going to get the picture that you are doing this purposefully to, pepper the jury's opinion without actually having a factual basis. They are extremely effective at that. And that's the only thing that really makes me worry, because I think that they've proved like several things, but there's less flash. And by the time that the defense and their flashier nature, their flashier, whatever word you want to fill in. Bull. I want to say bull. I don't know if I can curse on on Mel's channel.
Yeah, we're past the first 20 minutes, so go ahead. It's not a big deal.
Brian Steele will bullshit you. He does,
You got that,
and
right?
he never pulls out an exhibit. But by the end of his cross-examination, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, well, Mia has a lawsuit. Mia absolutely does not have any civil litigation against Puff Daddy. But he asked that question so many times that the jurors are left with that impression.
Right. And that's what they call the culmination of the questions that rise to some type of takeaway, as you say, from the jury. I'm just wondering, though, in terms of the flash, how much you think, I think I understand what you mean by flash, but how much do you think that's going to count when they get the jury instructions and look at all of the elements for deliberations?
How much do I think it's going to count? I think they're going to remember the parts they were awake for.
I got
They're
you.
going to need to step it up.
I got you.
I'm sorry?
No.
That might be tough because they were knocked out a lot on Friday.
Yeah, and granted, listen, the defense is doing what they're supposed to do. As a defense attorney, you only have certain tactics in your favor. If, for example, your client has beaten someone, now you have to come in, you have to impeach the witness by either memory or inconsistencies, or showing that they have some bad character, or just saying you're a liar. They use that a lot. Aren't you just lying? Aren't you just lying? Because now, as you said, that plants the seed. Are they lying? Well, there's the reasonable doubt. They are doing a lot of that. And the judge frowned at that very much when Maureen Comey, as you said, sharp as a tack, said, we can't have this. We can't have this harassment, this humiliation, this cumulative effect of him asking questions on the record that in and of itself is a testimony. The questions in and of themselves are a separate testimony, just like you're saying, Vince. That is true. Yep.
Could you break down impeaching the witness for the audience?
Well, so as a defense attorney, or as attorneys want to make sure that they have a solid witness, and by doing that, they prepare them in order to go take the stand, because cross is going to be very, very important. You want to show basically that the person that's on the stand is actually not telling the truth. And any way that you can get that witness to express something that will put reasonable doubt into the jury, that's all you need. Oh, there is that little reasonable doubt. And in the criminal court, we have to make a determination beyond a reasonable doubt. So that's why those questions are important, because as an impeachment tactic, you get people on their memory. You get people on maybe there's some characteristic about them that doesn't go along with what they're saying. You get them based upon inconsistencies. You get them based upon the fact that there might be some bias in what you're saying, and what you're saying as a witness. And when you bring all of that out, it makes the witness look like a liar, bottom line, or it gives jurors that reasonable doubt. So that's what the attorneys have been doing and trying to impeach the witness. And those are some of the strategies that they use.
All right, beautiful job. I don't want to keep you too long. I want to wrap this up. I want to wrap this up in 5 minutes, but I also want to give the audience a little something for the road too. So
Okay.
we're gonna do this a game style. I'll just breeze through the question. You guys try to give maybe a 10-word answer just to help a few people out. So I'll just breeze through.
Okay, 10 words.
Okay, they showed his financial records. So is the bank lying too? Is the bank lying? That's what Kim and them says.
Remind me, when did they show the financial records though?
Are you talking about with Ferguson?
They might be talking about Ferguson.
Oh.
So Kim and them, you have to qualify your question a little bit. All right. Let me make sure there's nothing in there we can't talk about. He only beat the girl up. I honestly don't believe none of that because it's a money grab. That's from Dewdrop. What do you guys think? Is a money grab?
I think Brian Steele signaled that to perfection.
I
and
think
proof positive is this comment.
Okay, JC. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go.
I think that the law was made equally to apply to anyone, so that if you feel like you have a case, go for it.
Okay.
It may look like a money grab, but that's why we have the laws.
Okay. JC Talks Trial says, how was the jury's response with Jane?
Moved. I think I saw them like uncomfortable when she cried.
Yeah, a lot of that. Okay. Kim and them
Not
says,
a lot
read
of
it.
that was shady.
Okay. Dewdrop says he ain't doing anything because he's under a 24-hour watch. Are they letting him leave to tamper with witnesses? Dewdrop.
Letting him leave from prison?
No, he's not. He's not leaving.
No, he's not.
Prison,
there was
guys.
a question in the beginning as to how he was using his phone calls to call people on three-way. I would imagine that's not going on now, but that's what was on the table.
I'm sure he has a toilet burner phone that he uses. I'm sure somebody has supplied that.
Okay. All right. Very good. We'll take just a few more. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. I think Mims is right at this point. What Diddy did was illegal. All right. So there's not a lot of questions here. I don't care about the talking trial. Okay. So that's it for that. So please like the video, guys. Share, subscribe if you like the material. Today we're going to have the one and only Candace Kelley, our legal analyst, to close out and tell us about you. But before you do that, Mims, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah. Mims, go ahead. Tell folks about you. Did we lose Mims?
Yeah, he may have stepped away. All right. So
he may have stepped away. All right, I'm at Candace Kelley. Sure. I'm at Candace Kelley TV. I do a lot of stuff. I never mentioned that I also have a podcast with Malcolm Jamal Warner called Not All Hood. You may know Malcolm Jamal Warner from The Cosby Show, so we do a podcast. I don't know why. I guess since this is so legal, but in any event, so I have a podcast also. I've also talked to people in the line. I have a hair care product line. It's called Curl Prep. That's something totally different, so I'll give you that. But I teach the law, and I also act as an expert witness in defamation cases. And I also explain the law on television so that people can understand. I'm a firm believer that the more you know about the law, the more you use the law to your advantage. That's why I said before, the law's out there just for you. People think, oh, I'm being so litigious. That's why the law is out there for you. People are using the law to the best of their. You have to understand it in order to have the words to say, hey, yeah, that didn't feel right. Maybe that's a wrongful termination suit, or maybe that that guy who put his middle finger up at me on the road maybe that's an assault because he was in a 6,000-pound car. Like, these are things that if you aren't familiar with it and you feel a certain way, don't know what to do. But the more familiar you are with the law, the better.
All right. Thank you. So we want to thank everybody for coming on today. We'll be back on again next weekend, bringing you week number 5. So stay tuned. We kind of help you sort through the media because someone called me this week and said they heard that Kamala Harris and Barack Obama testified in court. And I'm like, what in the world? What universe do you live in? So,
universe?
yeah, so we're here to try to help you navigate through the case, and we're also there every day in the courtroom taking notes and bringing it back to you. So please like, share, subscribe, stay on board. Come back next week. Show us some support. Tomorrow, I'll be live for a morning show, probably around 9 a.m. And then at 2 p.m., there will be a legal show. And at 5 p.m., I'll be on Fresh and Fit, I believe, just going through the notes from the trial.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, guys. And we will definitely stay on the case and bringing you the latest news. Have a good day, everybody. Candace, thank you so much, as always, for coming on. We appreciate everything about you. We want to support you. So, guys, go show us some love on her respective platforms. And also, please put your product link in the video so people can go and support you that way too. All right.
Sure. All right. And thank you. Number one in line with the hat, Mel. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. People don't like my hat, but guess what? The hat is here to stay. It's here to stay. All right. I like to get the hat going. Maybe I'll try to push it even more now. I'll wear a red one next time. No, I'm sure. All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you all, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.